Hi, Janelle here with Sheep Hill Herbs. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to another video, and I'm so excited to be in my new location for videos and for classes and all things herbs. And today I have a repeat video, something that I have posted over a year ago. And I'm kind of revisiting it because it's a popular video on my channel and it's about growing rosemary indoors. And so I hope I can do that video more justice than the first time around. So if you are new, welcome to my channel. I'm an artist, I'm an herbalist, and I am a lover of all things natural. And if you've been here before, thank you so much for coming again and for commenting. If everybody could like, subscribe, comment, check out my description down below. And my link tree specifically, my link tree links you to everything that is me. And that is my home herbalist course, which is a 10-month course that I now offer. And my newsletter and herbal things that I recommend. I recommend Mountain Rose Herb for bulk herbs. I recommend Nature Sunshine for encapsulated herbs or for like liquid chlorophyll, some Chinese combinations. They have so many things with Nature Sunshine. I don't make everything. I have my own Etsy shop where I have a handful, 2 handfuls, probably about 15 items. But nowhere near what Nature Sunshine can offer, so I direct you over there. Okay, let's get started with this video. I have rosemary here, a little rosemary plant, and this is Tuscan Blue Rosmarinus officinalis. And the video I had was growing rosemary indoors. And when I made that video, it was winter time. I brought my rosemary inside for the winter and it was doing fabulous, and it had flowered, which I never had happen before. So what I typically do, what I used to do is plant my rosemary in the ground, and we live in the Northeast, and I don't know what the planting zone is, but Pennsylvania, middle strip of Pennsylvania. And I would plant my rosemary in the ground and it would die every winter. Now, I didn't cover it. I guess if I maybe would have covered it with burlap or something, maybe it would have survived. So I started to put my rosemary in pots and bring the pots inside and then take it back out in the springtime because then I could enjoy it in the winter. Now, unfortunately, the rosemary that I had in the first video did not survive this winter. And it's a fickle plant. It is a Mediterranean plant. It likes moisture. It likes humidity. It's sensitive. Well, I feel like plants are sensitive inside. They're typically, meant to be outside. Herbs are usually very easy to grow. And I think especially if it's in its native habitat. When it's not, you do kind of have to fool around with the plant a little bit. But rosemary can get too wet and it can get too dry. You have to be really careful about it. I believe I got too dry. There was a spell of time where I neglected to water, and I think it got too dry. So unfortunately, I hate to say that it didn't survive, but I'm going to share some pointers and show you some things so that you could have some success, and maybe you're better, maybe you have more success than I do. So right now, I am just going to plant this rosemary. Now, I never grew rosemary from seed. You can do that. I'm too impatient, so I got this at a really nice nursery near me. And just dig a little hole, press it in the ground, smooth it out. The soil is already pretty damp because it's actually the perfect dampness. It's not too wet because it got rained on outside. So what I'm doing is I'm going to my handy dandy rosemary book. Rosemary Gladstar book because Rosemary Gladstar is my favorite herbalist, and it is her namesake, and I've learned a lot about rosemary from her. So let's see if I can share some things in here with you. This is what Rosemary Gladstar says. I must admit, I have a preference for this herb as it is my namesake. I'm named after my two grandmothers, Mary Agit-Knopf, I don't know how she says that name, on my mother's side, and Rose Carr on my father's side, and the name seemed to stick and grow with me, or I with it. In any case, under the careful guidance of my grandmother, Mary, I followed in her herbal footsteps. Rosemary, the herb, is native to the Mediterranean and grows freely in much of southern Europe and is cultivated throughout the world. Its genus name, Rosmarinus, means dew of the sea, in reference to the plant's natural habitat on the warm, sunny hillsides bordering the sea. So even just like the sea air, my sister lived in Texas where it's warm all year and had a rosemary bush. It was huge, grew really well. So it really depends where you live and if you have the growing conditions that are akin to it. If you had a greenhouse, I would put it in the greenhouse. Now for me, I have a sun porch, and in the winter I moved the rosemary up into my bedroom, which is warmer. But since then I now warm and heat my sun porch. That would be the better scenario because lots of sun and then some heat, but I would have to keep spraying. You can water the soil until it's soaked through. So whatever size pot you have, you want to give it a good watering and let it almost dry out, not too dry, but almost dry out before you water again. And then rosemary likes to have its leaves sprayed with a spray bottle. So Rosemary says, I grew up surrounded by the large rosemary bushes that thrived in the warm, sunny California farmland of my childhood. So California, very similar. Since moving to Vermont, I've become a rosemary murderer, she says. Rosemary can't survive freezing temperatures, and so where I live now, it must be brought indoors for a good part of the year. And that's what I was telling you. It detests dry heat. Many of us in New England heat with wood. It strongly dislikes having feet wet. Don't overwater, but doesn't like being dried out either. Don't underwater, okay? So all of this is, like I said, we have a very hot coal stove. So the air can get very hot. It is temperamental. And if you can get the conditions just right, though, you can have beautiful rosemary. It needs full sunshine, which means it will demand the sunniest window of the house and loves breezes. Keep the fan going or else powdery mildew will develop. And the funny thing is, this little plant that I have here has a little bit of that powdery mildew on it. So I'm going to be putting this outside very soon. It's maybe a teeny bit too early because we had a freezing night last night. But aside from that, it's easy to grow. I figured out how to keep my rosemary plants healthy at last, but only after killing nearly a dozen fine specimens. Here's what I've learned. A rosemary plant is best cultivated from a root cutting or stem layering. It loves fertile soil and full sunlight, though it will tolerate some shade. Water thoroughly and don't let the soil dry out completely between waterings, but don't overwater either. To have a really happy rosemary plant, mist the leaves weekly with diluted seaweed spray. Now that, I forgot she said that. I've never done that. I only use water. What I would do is use some kelp flakes, and I would put that in a spray bottle and shake that up really good, and that would mix in. Actually, you know what? I would probably make a tea with the kelp, cool it, and put it in the spray bottle, because if you had flakes, it would get the spray bottle thing stuck. Rosemary planted outdoors, it does well in zones 7 to 10 and can live to be quite elderly. I shouldn't say what I think my zone is, but I know I'm not zone 7 to 10. So give it a place in the garden where it can thrive for many years. It can stand a little cold weather, but generally will need to be covered and or brought in if temperatures dip below 40 degrees. Though some hardy plants can withstand colder temperatures. Trim back any dead branches. We often cut back rosemary plants quite severely, removing 1/3 of the tops in the late fall before bringing them in for the winter. So I hope that was more thorough and maybe a better video than the first time. As for medicinal purposes, so I am just going to continue to share from Rosemary Gladstar's book, Medicinal Herbs, A Beginner's Guide. I will link it in my description down below. I will actually have an Amazon link, and then click on that and type in her book, because I just can't do better than Rosemary in this instance. It's her herb, it's her namesake. Rosemary is legendary as a brain tonic, improving concentration and memory. Excuse me. So sometimes plants that I find are so deliciously tasty, I would not put in a capsule. I would drink as a tea. And rosemary to me is delicious, and I would make an infusion with rosemary. It is mild and uplifting. It has long been valued for its ability to ease headaches and migraines and to relieve mild to moderate depression. It is also well known as a circulatory stimulant. It's useful for problems associated with the cardiovascular system, poor circulation, and low blood pressure. Research shows that rosemary contains high levels of rosmaricine, I think I said that right, which acts as a mild analgesic, which is pain killing, and antioxidants, which together make it useful for inflammation. Yay! We love our herbs for that, such as arthritis and joint damage. Whether used fresh or dried, it is a good digestive aid, facilitating the digestion of fats and starches. And then one last thing she has here is rosemary lemon thyme tea. And that is combining rosemary with lemon thyme. So, you know, the rule of thumb is 1 teaspoon per cup of boiling water. So you could combine your rosemary, dried rosemary or fresh, with the lemon thyme into a teaspoon amount or a little bit more, cup of boiling water, and then add some honey to that. So delicious, good for the things I just mentioned. So thank you so much for coming to my rosemary video, and please share and come again soon. Bye for now.